Hello, I'm Dane Rose, and I want to first of all welcome and thank you for your interest in joining the first conscious 10x community. It's a very exciting process, and it challenges to grow something synergistic and organic and fit it into our linear thoughts. It's a real challenge to many of our paradigms. And so I want to talk about the somewhat delicate process of becoming a founding member, part of maybe 10 or 10 or so people to set a lot of the stages for the other 90 or so people that will emerge in time. So number one is everything that's new and has never been done before. You need to give a good 300% of slack or latitude, meaning if it looks like it can be done in 6 months, then plan on allowing 18 months. If it looks like it can be done for $100,000, allow for $300,000. Now, there may be some nice, pleasant surprises if it actually, comes in on budget and is done on time. But what I'm getting at is participating at this stage in the community is not something you can kind of slide in on the skin of your teeth, like I've barely enough money and barely enough time, and I've got a tight schedule, and I've got my landlord's given me eviction notice or something, and I've got to move over, and I'm ready to join a 10x community. It's going to be much more of a process of building a virtual model and becoming a virtual member of 10x Living, and then easing over into dense physical form. So I wanted to talk about, first of all, if you want to participate in this early stage, a couple of the key things. So number one, do you have the capacity to spend about $1,500 a month in living expenses without any need for outside work? Like you don't have to go out to a 9 to 5. Can you devote the majority of your time to this project and sustain yourself? So let's say you have a pension and you have $2,000 a month coming in, and you don't have any responsibilities and commitments. Well, that's perfect. Number two, do you have $100,000 or more that you can invest and risk losing and or tying up for, let's just say, 7 years? Can you tie up $100,000 for a 7-year period without, feeling that if you lost that, or if it was tied up and things got stuck at a certain point, let's say the location of the community falls under protest by a neighboring village, or a group of ranchers don't want to see an organic farm with this type of cultures emerging, and so things, it's held up in one form or another. Would you consider the goal of pioneering and sharing data about a 10x community to be worthwhile enough that it's worth the patience and the time? Because if not, you're not a candidate for a founding member of something that's so important and does take time. Then we move into, so that's kind of a lot of the financial types of things. So to prepare, if you're trying to ease towards that, you don't have that in place, Well, how much investing would need to occur before you could generate that in dividend income? Or how much would you have to save up so that you could have, for example, 3 years without any need to work? If we're looking at maybe $1,700 a month, we're looking at maybe $75,000 in kind of working capital or lifestyle capital for 2 or 3 years, plus a minimum of $100,000 to invest, so that you can participate and also focus your time on shaping the culture and the structures in the community. And to give you a little bit of context, depending on how many people sign up in an early stage, my sense is if there isn't a lot of support initially, because in our culture with a lot of survival and security type dynamics, and also a lot of child and adolescent thinking, the thought is to wait for other people to do the work and other people to take the risk, etc. I just want it when it's better, when I don't have to do anything and develop anything. And if it's better than my existing reality and I don't have to do anything, and I save money and it's more fun and I can already see it so I don't have to imagine and I don't have to lay foundation and wait and stuff, then I want to join. So finding members for a 10X community that saves people money and provides a substantial increase in quality of life is the easiest thing in the world when it's done. And a lot of people can't think and visualize, and so they come and then it's like, oh, I want to be here. And then they learn they could be there for less money than where they're at. And so that's easy. The challenge is, finding adults that have the patience and vision and love for the possibility field of such a community to invest initially, to put in the work, to invest the thought, the risk, the care, the imagination, the money, etc., to create such an environment. Because that's the point when the snowball becomes really self-sustaining, because that's the point when once you have a successful 10X community, and the recipe is trackable via an app, well, of course, other people then want to start their 10X community, and that's the idea. Over time, 1,000 10X communities around the world competing in the most beautiful competition of all to generate the most amount of sustainable well-being for their members, for the least amount of energy, the least amount of struggle, stress, pain, natural resources, time and money, to create the most amount of sustainable well-being. It's a tremendously beautiful vision that's an important foundation before becoming interplanetary as a species over the next 300 years, with the exponential rise in technology. We need to have the talent to create sustainable, ecological, harmonious, highly valuable 100-person communities, because that will make the difference in a new colony, whether it's Mars, the moon, or another place. If it can't work, if we don't have the science and experience and confidence, then not only do billions of dollars of effort and stuff, go up in smoke, but we don't become a spacefaring civilization with the ability and freedom to travel. So getting to this initial point where 100 people can be statistically picked with statistical probability, that if you start a new community and you pick people like this, and they engage like this, and they live together like this, and this is the protocol, that there's a 95% chance that it will be a 10x community that no one regrets joining. Well, that's an incredibly important accomplishment. So, once you've got the financial piece together, and I figured that I need roughly $500,000 to do this alone. And if I'm alone, I'll probably do it, someplace such as the Philippines, where I can hire a staff and maintain them to the point where it's then attractive and easy for other people to join. But obviously, I could do it tomorrow if there were 5 or 6 people, each with, more than $100,000, and we divide up the expenses of the infrastructure, and then set up the framework where as people join, they just need to contribute, somewhere in the $20,000 to $70,000 range. And then there's also, a framework where some members may be in a position to provide collateralized loans into, the property to allow people to construct their home and then start contributing work using, some of the employment platforms within the community, or perhaps already has a stable virtual job that they can use the community infrastructure and internet to support themselves. So that's on a financial level. On a practical level, you need skills. So there's a couple of different things that that I can do. I love cooking. I'm a master gardener and landscaper and shaper. I've been studying a lot of the architectural techniques. I've got a very good spatial sense of layout. I've also done facilitation of a variety of different types. And so, whether it's layout, garden, growing vegetables, etc., there's a lot that, that I can contribute in those roles. And if you look at the roles section, picking three or more things that you want to be good at and contribute. And early on, there's going to need to be, construction labor and skills, looking at different models for doing tiny homes and, doing that. So that's a skill set. Then there's the thinking and paradigm in relationship skill building. And that's one of the reasons that I'm doing kind of a community process around 10X Living, is that's actually in some ways the most important and also the most challenging part, is preparing to deprogram and clear out the brain to a point where you can learn new things and look with fresh eyes at the different dimensional pages and practice and feel about that and think about that and begin moving your personal life where you can in that direction. So doing your own research, reading, etc., becoming trauma literate, learning to train animals, learning how to code, learning how to edit videos, learning how to shoot video, learning how to writing a book, starting a blog in preparation about your transition towards a 10X life. So these are all things you can begin today. And, in my assessment of kind of the group that I want to begin with, I don't want someone who waits to the last minute and then quickly scrambles. But if someone, says, look, the last 2 years, as we've ramped up to this, I've spent, an hour a day learning this skill, practicing this, doing this. I switched my diet to this. I'm already eating organic food. I learned to cook like this. This is the model of my, the little tiny house I'd like to build for myself. I've traveled around and, found that, yes, I would love to be in a tiny community in this place or this place. I have books to contribute to the, community library. I've got my, investments lined up here, and I'm ready to go. Well, that's something you can rely on. I mean, because the reality is it gets much easier to do this as a group than as individuals. But it is the individual competency and support that leads up to that reality. Meaning, if you have a group of 10 individuals that are each waiting for someone to tell them what to do, so what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? It isn't easier in a group. You're better off seeing, can you cut it? Can you dedicate a certain amount of hours every day to moving in this direction, building this model, this dream, so that you can kind of slide into actuality at some point. So that's my approach personally, developing the ideas, something I'm doing all the time, reading, listening to Audible, something I'm doing all the time, investing, something that I'm doing, I'm investing $100,000 a year so that it can grow, so that if it comes down to this, I can do it all on my own, because, it's worth it. It's worth sowing that seed. And so, if I have to save up $1 million and hire all the staff for the first, 3 years, et cetera, and then transition slowly into community, hey, I'm game for that. But it's fun to do it together, and you'll have to join me in waiting for that reality to take place if you don't want to actively, pony up the time and money, et cetera, it takes, to get a head start on that, because I'm probably around 5 years out from hitting the million point, and a few years earlier for hitting the 500,000 point. So, but a lot of this could be acted on immediately with the right 10 people or so. Now, this brings up another thing, that you could also create secure, low-interest loan investments to enable a team that might be, because often college-age individuals are the most motivated and have the most time and vision, but the least amount of money. And so, access to, somewhere over $500,000 in capital and, in low interest loans that, are held for up to 10 years just to, allow everything that could possibly go wrong to go wrong, and still come out the other side. That's something that you can pledge without necessarily preparing your whole lifestyle to join such a community. And, it's far more exciting and fun to invest in something like this than it is to, invest in some petroleum stock or whatever. So, these are some of the preparations. So you have the mental, emotional, reading preparation, the financial preparation, the skill building preparation, and then you have the collaborating and networking preparation of, can our personalities get on? Because it's going to be a very high pressure environment for 10 people to, or more, to formulate a culture. We'll all have our own ideas, and then the other thing that I think is really important is the app. because I'm not sure that the community can survive without the app. Because anytime you're forming a new culture, the root word of a culture is a cult. And it's very natural for when you break orbit from an existing culture to have, once you've gotten away that I let go of my way of burying people, my way of birthing, my way of eating, my way of this, now you're out there. It's a very fluid period. And so as the culture takes shape, traditionally it's been around a personality that has very clear ideas, etc. And that then shapes, what happens on a daily basis. And that is one path, a cult of personality, until things get established. And then once you've stabilized, because the benefit of a culture is its stability. It provides a set of norms so that you don't endlessly analyze every single thing every day. I don't want to be the authority figure. I don't want go ask Dane, go ask Dane, go ask Dane. That's creating a very vertical situation. What I'd much prefer is that the very best practices that we can come up with, as shared researchers, looking at all the different cults in history and the different ways of doing things, that we develop prototypes of best practices based on data. We share, this is the data, this is the practice. Now, it's very important to get results before iterating, because you can argue theory endlessly. So you develop a best practice and you do it for a year, right? Now, if everyone says that it's absolutely amazing, and the normal way of doing things is 50-50, well, then you keep doing it unless there's something that's bothering a certain percentage of people. And then you look at, well, how can we keep the benefits? And for this kind of democracy, you need transparency and participation. And so we really need an app. Now, the app may cost $250,000 in coding and programming in order to get to the point where it's easy, it's intuitive, and it's the glue that provides all the instant data that holds the community together without a power group. And this is also among the most modern forms of democracy. So it's its own kind of iterative technology and experiment. And so, one of the most important things in the virtual level of community is to participate by funding the app, which, has 3 or 4 levels. One is, clarifying all the conceptual aspects, which I've mostly done. The other is creating a UX interface for the app, which has yet to be done. That's around, $5,000 to $15,000 worth of user interface graphics for every single use of the app. So let's say that's a $15,000 expense. I can donate the time to kind of work with a graphic artist. But then we have breaking the functionality into modules and hiring coders to develop it and to decide whether we want it to work on both Android and Apple, or just be web-based or work only with one of them. I like Android a lot more than I like Apple because it's a much freer protocol. There's a lot fewer control dynamics, and also the devices are cheaper for the same quality. So Apple charges more per feature than just about any other company, and it also has a very kind of jealous monopoly on control. So for those reasons, I would pick Android over Apple if choosing to save coding money by just doing one. Because if someone doesn't have an Android phone when they join the community, we can give them one for $100. It's no issue. And then we have the experiential and iterating of the app, where people say, I don't like this feature, or I press this and it doesn't work. So you have an iterative phase as you test the features and iterate. And then finally, you have maintenance. But the app is a tremendously important foundation point because the app is also, in my opinion, what 10x is the value of the community. Here's why. Number one, if the app can successfully serve as a power structure such that it's not so-and-so has the authority to kick someone out of the community, but rather the app. If you never do your chores, if you're late paying your loan, if you don't participate and share data the way the rest of the community is, within the design of the app, we can pick a threshold of competency and participation where that's kind of a point system where, if you have that we're looking for a very high ratio of value for each community member per hassle, that it's fine. Everyone has limitations, hassles, problems, etc. But if you have most of the problems and hassles and most of the laziness to deal with it and the least amount of value, you're not a good pioneer for a new culture. You might fit in nicely 50 years after establishing such a culture, and there may be room for the culture to do well with 10% lazy people. But there isn't any room. A new culture is a very vulnerable creation. And so someone who isn't cutting it and isn't willing to change the pattern can be suggested, to leave, and a protocol can just be put in place that, if you have more than 100 points of problems and hassles, we begin the protocol outlined in the app for exiting the community. And, it's not about judging the other person. It's obviously not your cup of tea to form a new culture, as an early member of, such an important venture. So, if that can be done successfully, well, that app can be the basis for 1,000 other communities worldwide. It may need to be translated into Japanese, etc. Fine. Well, that's much cheaper to do than to recode the whole app. So it becomes a basis for the community to seed. Because once hundreds of people interested in looking at and joining communities, one can't fit in because we're not going to let the community grow beyond 150 people. At that point, start your own community, start another one. Keeping the scale is very important. Then this app can be a teacher and a guide and a way where communities can talk to one another. We're having trouble recruiting. What did you do? Well, here's what we did, and you can just share the data, from one community to another. So that's a very important part of the process. And then the app is also critical for a 10x infusion of data points. If you have to go around to 100 people and say, how are you feeling today? How are you feeling today? How are you feeling today? And then write it down. And then a person has to collate and create the statistic. And then the person has to go back to 100 people and tell them, here's how so-and-so and so-and-so is doing. It's not going to happen. But if every single person every single day is 1 to 10, 1 to 10, 1 to 10, 1 to 10, that's a 5-second process. And then that instantly generates a data set that anyone who wants to open the app can see, here's the well-being quotient for the community today. Why is it so low today? Oh, so-and-so and so-and-so had a fight about this. So, okay, we're aware of why our community well-being is low today. I see. So then there can be protocols within the app to do what Toyota does when there's an issue, which is to go 5 layers back. Why did that happen? 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 At that point, when that problem is solved at that point, again, referencing the app, you have a tremendous transformation in the culture and an understanding of how to avoid that particular problem going forward. Every one of these learnings creates and increases the value of the community. And with an app and training protocols, it also creates job opportunities for community members to teach other community founders how to start their community. So below is a form, and as soon as you're clear you want to be involved, I encourage you to fill it out. And one of the things that I think is most important right now is donations, contributions, investments, however you want to frame them. You can do a donation. You can do an allocation for your portion of the app expenses. You can also do an investment, because if we are successful at being able to generate a 10x community for less money and time and natural resources than the status quo, there will be many other people who want to join that. And the app could be the single most valuable data set. I mean, whether it's NASA or Elon Musk or Bezos or whatever, if we have the single most powerful technology for cohesing 100 people in a brand new space that consumes very little energy, and that app works, well, why the hell wouldn't Elon Musk want that app running the Mars colony? And so it could save billions of dollars. So it's a very valuable piece of technology. And if you, again, want to invest in something for the long haul and in service to your species, please join in. Thank you.